Okay, you got the mic on? All right, thank you. Rax Frizzle here. Welcome. Thank you for joining me on this Thanksgiving Day, November 26th, 2020. Yeah, COVID. If you're looking at this from, say, a future that just dug up this computer, know that in 2020 it was a strange year, and we all ended up either locked down or being shamed for not being locked down. It was one of the two. But that's where we ended up. And I'm not going to say it's right. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm going to say I am not doing well, as many of you know. And I would be considered in the high stratosphere range for at risk and probably a candidate for the, yeah, you guessed it, vaccination. So I'm not telling you to get vaccinated. I'm not telling you don't get vaccinated. What I'm telling you is, looks like I will put myself front of the line, because here's the deal with me. Not with you, with me. I'm at high risk right now. I would guess that at this moment in time, that if I contracted corona, my chances of survival would be severely limited. And that's as far as I'm going with it. I just don't want any further than that, but facts lay before us. Now, it seems that we are looking at a media that does not understand facts or how to interpret them. And I guess that's fine. Maybe we can vote them out too by not watching. But nonetheless, the facts would tell me it's time for me to get in line. So I don't know at this time when it will be available. I hear in a couple of weeks, and then I hear there's distribution. Let's call them hurdles. Yeah, definitely. And God love them. I mean, they're going to try, and they're going to have some problems, and they're going to crawl all over those, I guess, because it's still Trump. But nonetheless, they're going to do their very damn best to get it to us. And those who want to go get it, that's you. That's you. You, not you, but like whoever you are, and you want to go get it, go get it. That'd be up to you. If you don't want to go get it, I'm leaving that up to you. Now, what the U.S. government does is somewhat unpredictable. Nonetheless, I'm going to be first in line. And if there's a problem and there's discovered issues and they come through me and I don't have good luck with it, the rest of you will know a little more about the dangers and will have had the services of one Rax Frizzle to stand in front of you. That is, this is the way it is. I would like to tell a story today. It's being Thanksgiving, and I'm very thankful, man. I have a good life. It's a peaceful life, and it's a good life, and I share it with, first of all, my good Lord and Savior, and I share it with my dear wife, and occasionally friends and family. My point is that even in the midst of COVID, and I very much stay away from folks because I know I can still get it. Whatever. Will be. Stuff like that. I will know that I did what was reasonable to not get it. Reasonable for me, reasonable for you. Come on, government, stay out. Stay out. Just go away. Now, they won't do that, but God love them. They need to. So here's the story for today. Turns out this is about an old fella. And I heard this some time ago. And it came to mind recently. Fairly non-specific, I guess you might say. And what I would like to do is tell you the story. It's about an old fella. Very old, as a matter of fact. And old, reliable sort of a fella. Like the kind of guy that you you could go to and talk and get good advice. He would never give you bad counsel. He might tell you he didn't know, which was a huge sign of his intelligence. This fellow became known as a bit of a counselor and a bit of a mentor to many people throughout his life. And those who were lucky enough to share in that, and I'd like to count myself among them, well, we know just how committed he was to being available to hand his legacy to the next generation. And I thought that was kind of a wonderful thing. So, since, as all of us are mortal, no matter what we decide to do, it's going to get cut short. And this fellow, dear fellow, I'm going to call this fellow Ben. Old Ben. Ben's a good old man. People that knew him loved him. His family loved him. And then he started kind of declining a little slowly. But it wasn't just his body, because he'd always been kind of robust. No, it wasn't just his body. What was happening was he couldn't respond like he used to. He couldn't quite get his thoughts in order a lot of times, and get his thoughts across. And some folks felt that in his old age he was just getting a little bit, I hate to say the word, but rude. Because he would cut people off, kind of speak over them. Sometimes it appeared he wasn't even listening. Well, most people were drawn away a bit. Some weren't. But the point is, as it progressed, he got worse. But he didn't get worse in a way that you'd call rude. He got worse in a way that you might call not at home. This man had never been rude. He just couldn't quite put the old wisdom into words again for quite a while, and it just got to the point where this old fella was laying in his bed. He had to have people do everything for him. And you know, when you have somebody like that that you just love to death, that condition is almost intolerable. It's kind of unusual, but somebody that was kind of, let's just say, not so smooth, maybe a little mean-spirited or whatever, when they get to that point, it's probably not. It's just professionals taking care of them. There's really no emotion one way or the other. And what's happening is this fella that was on the other end of that spectrum, completely on the other end of that spectrum, was coming to the same central point where there was no emotion. Yeah, no emotion at all. But what no one knew was that that wasn't necessarily the case. But it turns out that this fellow had a nephew. And the nephew was kind of a young fellow full of a bit of vinegar, but it had a really good relationship with old Ben. And he'd sit by old Ben's bed, try and talk to old Ben, because he always had been able to talk to him. So he thought, well, I'll just talk to old Ben, see what he wants. And his eyes sparkled up. Couldn't do much, but he could raise that one hand up. And he could, it was kind of jerky, you know, but he could turns out he could motion, kinda. It wasn't real specific, but you gotta get the idea here. Well, turns out his nephew His name was Jack, little Jack. He was always kind of little, but that doesn't matter. He had big heart, Jack was. Jack was taking some notes, like Uncle Ben, it would be Uncle Ben. On Wednesday, Uncle Ben reached out to me and smiled. And he was writing notes. And he went in there with Ben. He pulled out his notepad, and Ben started pointing. And then Jack realized that he was pointing at his notebook there. The notebook, you know. And he said, Ben, you want my notebook? And old Ben, boy, he just kind of went to fidgeting. It's like, okay, well, here's my notebook. If you want to read it, he knew old Ben wasn't going to be able to read that. But he said, I wrote things that you did on here. And he's flipping the pages, He said, well, Ben, these are things I wrote about you. And Ben reached up and he grabbed that notebook and he shook it. And he shook it until it flipped open to an empty page. And then he kept shaking it. And he held it up to Jack and he shook it some more. Jack said, you want to write something? And he went to really shaking it. He was like, okay. But he didn't want to hand him that pen. That was like, this guy, well, he could help that. And he looked around the room and all he saw was this big old marker. Big old chunky marker. It was black too. But old Jack, he took a risk and he put that marker in old Ben's hand. And Ben went up to that paper and slashed across it and then held it up. And then Jackie took that marker from him. Ben's holding that and he's shaking it at Jack, shaking it. And Jack said, yeah, Ben, I see what you got. Yeah, that's real good there, old Ben. What you want me to do, put it up on the wall or something? And old Ben went to hopping up and down. Old Jack, in a moment of pure heart, took a piece of tape and stuck that thing on the wall. And old Ben just relaxed. And you could see a little smile on his face. You could see old Ben smile. He hadn't smiled in the longest time. But he had a smile. And he just kept looking at that paper. Well, the next day, old Jack came in. Jack. Anyway, old Jack, he walked in and Ben's eyes lit up. And Ben got his hand up and he's pointing at Jack's pocket. And Jack had that notebook. And he said, you want it? Here. And he just gave him the notebook and Jack flipped it open to an empty page. And Ben holding it nice and tight. And he said, you want to write something on it again? And old Ben, he's shaking, and Jack handed that marker up. He went the other way. And he held it up to old Jack, and Jack took it and said, well, you're pretty proud of that, old Ben. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll put this up on the wall. And he slapped it up on the wall and just stuck it up there on the other side where Ben can see it. Ben just started doing this here. Just like that. That's all he would do. He would do nothing but. And Jack said, what's up? What's up, Uncle? And he just kept shaking his head. But the whole time he was pointing at that notepad, the new one, and he's shaking his head no. And Ben said, you want me to move that thing or what? And he just kind of, Ben relaxed. Jack took that thing and moved it, and he said, you want me to go down? And he's like, Want to go up? Over this way? Okay, boom. And he stuck it on the wall. Well, this went on for quite a while. Time passes. Sometimes old Jack, he'd come in. He'd bring extra notebooks and a big marker. And old Ben went to have the time of his life. He'd pick up that arm, make a little flash one way or a curl the other way or whatever. It was just and make old Ben put it up on the wall. Then he'd start pointing. Got to where this wall's starting to get kind of cluttered up. And every day, old Ben, he'd point at a certain one, which was hard to tell because he's shaking a little. But they'd figure it out, and he'd want to move it. Sometimes he'd move it 3 times. Sometimes it would go back right where it was. Yeah. So he'd move that thing around, and another one, and every day that was just like what they did. Pretty soon the wall was almost covered, and quite honestly, Ben was starting to kind of decline a little bit. Even with all that activity, he was still declining. And it got to where there was only one spot left on that wall. And Ben and Jack were there. It kind of was weird the way, after he moved all them, that it was shaped like, almost like 2 clouds, 2 ovals, offset from each other, just kind of covering up randomly. And, yeah, so they stuck that last one on there, and Ben just slumped down. It's almost like he was out. It was a sad time. It was a sad time for Jack, because Jack was watching. Even this was receding. And he knew that this was something that this was unusual. But nonetheless, it was dear to his heart. So he's noticing that for the next week or so, Ben barely moved. And they were talking about moving him into another kind of facility. Jack walked in. Ben, you'll have to take down your papers now. And for the first time in weeks, old Ben started kind of quaking a little bit. Quaking, just kind of quaking. And he reached out and he kind of startled old Jack, and he grabbed him, pulled him toward himself. And what he wanted to do was hug him. He was trying to get that arm up around his neck. It kind of looked, well, clumsy. But that's what he was doing. But then he took old Jack's head and started turning and pointed. And like it was like, take a look at this. And that's when Jack noticed that if you looked at it just right, all those lines on 295 pieces of paper lined up and spelled out very few words. Please be patient. I think that is a wonderful